everyone, and welcome back to our latest installment of Vegemite between two pieces of finely cut bread, otherwise known as a Warframe guide. Yay! Today we're going to be covering a heavily requested topic, the Orb Mothers. When I do my streaming thing over on twitch.tv/Makari, come and join us. We usually end up helping people with these beautiful arachnophobia-inducing spider bosses to get their Nightwave done or just to farm out whatever rewards they do individually drop. And originally, I had actually no intention of making a guide on them, as I thought, well, they're so niche and it's not like they're specifically worth doing. But people pointed out to me that they're great ways of farming credits, resources, and yes, you do get Hildren out of it as well, I suppose. The great space thickness that she is. So, I thought, why not? I find them actually quite fun to do, and why not have another excuse for me to flex my mighty E-peen all over my community? We're going to start with the Profit Taker. The exploiter will come in a separate video and probably involve some level of Britishisms, because let's face it, that old mother is rather stereotypically British.
Medicine, children! Mother needs her medicine!
The Profit Taker was the first of the Orb Mothers, released way back near the start of Fortuna, and originally it was seen as a bit of a disappointment, as it was very bland mechanically, but really, we just have to see these spiders as the equivalent of the Eidolons on PoE, so this one really is more of the introduction for how Orb Mothers function, the kinds of damages that work, and the like of that nature. Although, unlike the Eidolons, the Orb Mothers are much more diverse between the two encounters that currently exist, as they are much more encounter-based as opposed to just go out and kick the crap out of them until they no longer exist. Whereas on the flip side, the Eidolons are pretty much identical to each other in mechanics, function, and focus much more on the ideals of setup. And although the Profit Taker is a little sparse mechanically, she is quite demanding setup-wise. The first thing we need to know about the Profit Taker is how to actually start her encounter, as it's not as simple as the Eidolons, which just spawn at night time and you can just sign up or go out there and they'll be there waiting for you, like a dog waiting for their master to come home from their 9 to 5 job and look at you big puppy dog eyes as if you haven't fed them in a year. Sorry. It's like reminiscent there. Either way, they're just there with the Eidolons. These guys actually require you to do something. In order to actually start the Profit Taker encounter, you must first of all become Eld Mate with Solaris United, and then go talk to Ducky in the hidden room where everyone's having a party without you. The dicks. This will then send you on a journey of completing a series of heisty bounty missions, which can also be farmed for lovely mods and rep items usually relevant to your arc gun in some way or another. But once all those initial bounties are done, you finally unlock the final heist, or bounty, whatever you want to call them, to go and punch the Profit Taker in her face? Does she have a face? I'm not entirely sure. I mean, either way, doing this will also give you access to your Gravimag. Now, the Gravimag is a must. If you do not have it, you physically cannot start the encounter. So don't sign up to a mission with other people if you don't have it, because otherwise they'll start the mission up and then the message will come up going, your friend does not have the Gravimag or an arc gun deployer available to them, therefore they can't go out there. And then they're going to be mad at you. And then they're not going to want to take you anymore. So, make sure you get your arc gun deployer and your Gravimag. Very, very important. Before you begin the Profit Taker encounter, you must realize it is vital to keep your setup in mind. As mentioned, the Profit Taker isn't too hard mechanically, but much like the Eidolons, has a lot going for it to make life hard for you setup-wise. So coming with a premeditated setup and doing your research on your setup is very, very important. So what's optimal? For the Gravimagged arc gun, you can pretty much use anything, but my suggestion is the Imperator Vandal or the Velocitus, as they are very good on initial damage and fire rate and scale immensely well with the mods you will then choose, which will be something I'll explain more about in a moment. The important thing with both the regular weapons that you bring and your arc gun is that you bring them with as many varying elements as possible, as again, this is going to be something that's very relevant to one of the mechanics during the encounter that I'll explain later. And then, with the arc gun, I would make a suggestion that you bring at least radiation damage on it, as the Orb Mothers are primarily weak to radiation and what most mechanical and sentient enemies would be weak to. As for your frames, however, I'm just going to be straight here. Your best bet is Chroma. Whether that's soloing or in a team, you want Chroma. He is unbelievable, and with the sheer amount of damage and buffs he gets from his Vex armor, it's astounding. So I'll show you my build in a moment here that I personally use. Ideally, all you need to do is keep your armor, your Vex armor active, and keep your 2 up as well for the extra health. So long as you're using the red energy for the fire buff from the energy color, that will then keep you alive and affect your Vex armor as well. In a team setting, it could be advisable to also bring a support frame such as Trinity to really make sure no one dies, but this is definitely isn't mandatory. I mean, in fact, none of this is really mandatory. You're not really on a big time constraint on this, so long as you focus on getting the weapons optimal, the frames you bring are then just a boon to your potency. In fact, improving survivability would, in my eyes, be more your focus, especially if you're new to the Orb Mother, as there's no real DPS check until the final phase of the Prophet Taker, so even bringing something like an Inaros or a Rhino could work incredibly well here, as well as for the sake of learning the encounter itself. As promised, I will now show you my personal choices for your Trinity and Chroma, keeping in mind that this is all subjective and you can sort of mod and play how you want. This is just how I personally build and play with these 2 frames. Trinity. Trinity, as with a Eidolon run, runs in a very similar fashion here. You want a powerful blessing build, which is going to require you to have a decent amount of power strength and a decent amount of duration to make that blessing last longer. With this, you can try and get some affinity range to increase the radius of your blessing. However, that is something that is probably a bit too complicated for a new player's guide that we're doing here, so I'll kind of leave that as something to research for yourself. Ideally here, you want at least Intensify and possibly Augur Secrets for that power strength, and then run as many duration mods as possible, with maybe Vitality or even some other survivability mods in there to keep you alive. Again, survivability is almost key here, as Trinity, you're not really going to be doing much damage anyway. So staying alive is essential, and Trinity helps a lot with that. Now, Chroma, much like how he runs on an Eidolon fight, is there for the damage. He's there for the big chunky buff he can get. Ideally, you're looking at 301% power strength to get one of the most ideal buffs possible, using the red energy for the fire buff from your Vex armor and your elemental armor. And with the power strength of 301%, you get probably the biggest buff you can possibly get. You want some duration to make that last longer as well. And you do have nice amounts of survivability already, but having at least Vitality to take advantage of the bonus health from your elemental armor will work really well here. Now let's talk about the fight itself. The Orb Mother, the Prophet Taker, the lovely lady that she is, itself is split into a few different phases, with a number of abilities. To make sure I don't insult your intelligence, however, I'm not going to list off all the abilities, otherwise we'd be padding this video like a champ, but I will, however, mention the abilities that are actually worth paying attention to. That's not a case, I mean, these other abilities, they are quite literally just a case of don't stand in the stupid stuff. Because if you stand in the stupid, you're stupid. So don't stand in stupid. It is literally that simple, as with most mechanics. I don't want to have a video lasting 5 hours where I just explain how bad standing in fire is, because anyone that's played World of Warcraft will damn well know how bad that can be. So right off the bat, something you're going to have to be dealing with throughout the course of the encounter is a steady stream of corpus reinforcements. If you keep on top of your game and knock down the reinforcement pylons when you see them, then you won't really have to deal with too many of them. Though, through the fight, you will notice that if you leave these pylons up, the encounter can quite quickly become hectic, overrun with copious amounts of raptors, spidery enemies, and big chunky enemies with big old guns that will absolutely massacre you to bits. So keep it down below the 1 check mark of the alert status, otherwise it will become a much, much harder encounter. And because you can control the amount of enemies here, you might as well stay on top of it. The only other ability that is a constant pain in the butt through the fight is the Force Shields. These will spawn at random around the Orb Mother and the shield batteries that appear later in the fight. They then shoot off in the directions they're facing and knock you back should you be hit by them, which can be a massive pain in the butt. To best avoid these, jump into operator mode and void dash over or around them, or try to outrange them if you can. It's very unlikely you'll manage to do that, and it can just be a waste of time. They're not really going to do much damage, but they can be a pain in the ass and knock you into ravines, water, and all that sort of jazz. They're kind of obvious where they are, and they do spawn in different patterns. Just try to avoid them if you can. You can also stand right underneath the Prophet Taker herself, and that will mean you're within the actual confines of the barrier itself right off the bat, so you don't necessarily need to worry about them too much. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Once you've engaged the Orb Mother, similar to the Eidolons, the Orb Mother then has a shield that prevents damage of any kind affecting the Orb Mother's health. So, how do we lower this? Well, this is where the different elements I mentioned earlier comes into play. The main core mechanic through this encounter is the Orb Mother's shield polarity, which is something you would have engaged with through the process of doing the previous heists to get here in the first place. On the front of the Orb Mother, there will be a signifying hologram denouncing the weakness the shield has. So learning your elements, like we're back in secondary school with the periodic table, learning those images will be very useful. So you can already tell that this is going to be a barrel of laughs. So playing the guessing game and eventually getting the polarity right with the damage type you're using, you will slowly or quickly whittle down the shields, and every 20% of shields lost, she will then realign her polarity, meaning you need to play the guessing game all over again. You can also speed this process up by using your operator, as shooting the orbs with Orb's shield with your amp or void damage in general will cause the polarity of the shield to cycle, allowing to more easily take control of the encounter. Once the shields are down, then the Orb Mother's legs become vulnerable, and this is where you need to grab your arc gun, as the only weapon that can deal damage to them is said arc gun. Once each of the legs have been blasted out from under the Orb Mother's body, she'll crumple to the ground and cry like a bubbly baby. And allow you to then attack her main body, dealing 33% of her life bar. After that's dealt, she then becomes immune to damage and will fire off missiles in all directions, which act as shield batteries. These will then land and erect a shield around them, meaning you need to move right up close to them to actually deal damage to them. Once they're all destroyed, then the encounter will rinse and repeat. You take the shields back down once more, and then you kill another set of batteries after that. She falls on her ass once more, and in her final phase, you then get a 5-minute countdown. If you don't kill the Orb Mother in the time, the Orb Mother will become completely immune and you fail the mission. And all of Fortuna is destroyed.
What the fuck? Kaboom.
Oh, no. So make sure you finish her off before that happens. And really, this is actually kind of interesting because it's probably the only major boss encounter in the game that has an automatic fail mechanic within the encounter itself. And we haven't really seen something of this nature since the raids, really. I mean, there's a couple other things in the game of that nature, but really, this final phase is where you have to kind of pay a bit more attention, because you have to kill her before that timer ends. And I love the fact that they've actually added this in here to give you a sense of urgency. And this is where it kind of differs from the Eidolons. With the Eidolons, you have the urgency of daytime approaching. But having a distinctive 5 minutes is a very short window. And this is where your optimization will show dividends, because if you've optimized yourself, you'll kill it. If you don't meet the DPS requirement, you're gonna fail. Sometimes it can come down to luck as to whether you get the right polarity of shield, but you get the idea. It's not too complicated in the grand scheme of things. And if you do manage to kill her within the time, then the spoils of war shall be yours. The Profit Taker drops a baseline of 125,000 credits, which stacks with credit boosters and other credit boosting effects, and a variety of other debt bonds which you need for occasionally going to ticker, and occasionally some rare Arcwing mods and other lovely little tidbits as well. And last but not least, run! She's gonna blow! If you don't run away in time, she quite literally explodes and kills you all. So, do run. Do make sure you get out of there. Don't stand around like an idiot. As you've probably figured out by this point, the Profit Taker execution-wise is not all that difficult. The hard part lies in making sure you have the right frame and modded in the most optimal manner. But really, as far as fights go, this can be quite enjoyable. And if not a little bit on the repetitive side, because once you've learnt the first phase, it's basically a case of rinse and repeat until you're done, with an added time constraint on the final phase. But if you're looking to farm credits or debt bonds, or if you just want a creepy spider articular, then this can be a lot of fun for that purpose. So, I hope you've all enjoyed this Profit Taker guide. We will be getting round to the Exploiter Orb guide very soon. In fact, it will very likely be the next video you see on this channel. And as always, we recorded these videos on our Twitch stream. So if you want to come and join us recording these and being part of the videos, helping decide on the sort of silly stuff we get up to, then by all means come and join us. And if you haven't checked out my Twitter, also give my Twitter a follow because, you know, social media and all that jazz. Go and check out all the relevant links down below, and I will hopefully see all of you top hatters in the next video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and maybe share it to your pet gimp you got hide away somewhere. I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ra!